And the tweet says, with our video embedded, this guy thinks being the best Warzone player in the world is, quote, way more skillful than being the best CDL player. That tweet currently has 7 million views on Twitter. So it is safe to say it went pretty viral. And after this tweet happened, the majority actually of the big Call of Duty commentators in the scene picked this up, most of whom were not very happy. Activision devs do not play their own game.
3,000 devs can't figure out how to add a reconnect feature to a AAA title, I guess. I don't know.
Because Infinity Ward doesn't tell their consumers anything.
Maybe that'll take some of the sweats away from Shoot House.
You can cope about that, for sure.
Thanks for tweeting, at least. Thanks for doing more than Infinity Ward has done. They just keep tweeting about the soccer bundles in the store.
Things that are bad. We've got a couple words. Why don't you kick it off, Tanner?
This is going to be a longer section than the first part you guys heard.
Change it, obviously, of course. Well, here we are. We are live, boys and girls. Welcome to the Dropshot, a Call of Duty podcast. Who gave us podcasting equipment, by the way, Tanner?
Drew.
Who would do that? Episode
I think
number
Amazon
393.
Mostly, where I got my stuff.
It was mostly our listeners, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, it was our listeners.
Yeah,
we had headset microphones and crappy webcams, little, poopy webcams. And then we solicited our listeners who loved hearing what we had to say so much that they wanted to hear it in higher quality with better video quality. And they gave us podcasting equipment. So shout out to the listeners. Anyways, welcome to the show. Today, we have a special episode, an interesting little topic that we're going to be going over, which is a surprise to us when we made the schedule this week, for example, on Monday. We did not expect to be doing the episode we are about to do. Now, originally, the intention for today's episode, much like every other Thursday episode we do after a either new season or mid-season update, was to cover the patch notes. Warzone. Now, for 2 reasons, that is probably not what we're going to be doing today. Reason number 1, actually, not very much to talk about with Season 1 Reloaded. It's a pretty scant patch in terms of new content. And in fact, it didn't even work on day 1. We couldn't play the game. We will get into that at some point. So number 1 would have been less to talk about than we expected today, regardless. But number 2, and more importantly, and probably why many of you are here and are excited, is we had our first bona fide viral moment on the internet. In the Call of Duty world. And it is, again, quite a surprise to Tanner and I. But to be clear, exactly what we do TikToks for, which is to get eyeballs, which finally worked with one particular TikTok. And we are going to talk about the TikTok itself, all the replies we've gotten to it, and address all of the substantive and well thought out, reasoned counter arguments to our TikTok video. So that's primarily going to be the focus today. Depending on how long that takes, we may or may not cover the patch notes as well, which was our original intention. I'm leaning toward probably not. This is probably going to take a while. This is probably just going to be responding to all the backlash we've gotten, frankly. And if that is the case, which again, I think is likely, we are going to kind of roll Saturday's episode, make it like a 2-in-1. So we'll go over the patch notes on Saturday, everything that's been fixed since the very broken launch of Season 1 Reloaded, and then also talk about our first impressions. So that's probably going to be just a combo episode on Saturday. And today we're very likely going to dedicate to the viral moment we are having. This is our 15. What is the expression? 15 minutes of fame. We are going to tap dance. We are going to tap dance in those 15 minutes. We're not going to talk about patch notes right now because there are more pressing things to discuss. Now, before we get into that, which I know you're all very excited about, we have a couple of quick acknowledgments / announcements. We're going to kind of get through these pretty quick here because I want to get to what everyone's looking forward to. So first and foremost, welcome to our new patron this week, Adam S., our new gold patron. Thank you very much, buddy. We appreciate that. Adam, patreon.com/the Dropshot. We do 5 bonus episodes a month. We do monthly hangouts. You also get ad-free and early access to all of our episodes if you're a patron at any level. And we love and appreciate you, Adam. So thanks for that, Chief. Also, we got some super chats in YouTube before we started the live stream. So I'm going to quickly acknowledge and thank all of you guys. Nebstafer with the 10 Canadian, but is negative ass Tanner happy is the real question. I can't imagine quitting a job to bitch about a game and ask for gifts on a podcast. #winner. That is a Dropshot community favorite copy pasta.
Yeah.
That was an unironic comment once upon a time. Neb, thank you very much for the 10 Canadian dollars. We appreciate that. Patios as well with the 10 Canadian super chat. Thank you, buddy. No message there, but we appreciate the support. Reichard's Dungeon with the 10 United States dollar super chat for making Ghost of Hope a crybaby on Twitter. You're very welcome. And nothing makes me happier. Well, a couple things do, which we'll get into shortly. But that made me quite happy. And you're very welcome. We've enjoyed that as well. By the way, Rich coming from Ghost of Hope. Real Rich. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and all of the cockamamie wrong leaks that he has leaked, and then when they never come to pass, he just deletes the tweet or doesn't talk about them ever again. Very rich coming from Ghost of Hope, but that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. And then Boomertown Gaming said, I hate Ted, and super chatted $10, which is fair with Season 1 Reloaded. McBango FPS, Young Bang, well-earned currency with the 10 United States dollars. Thank you, buddy. I'm glad you've been enjoying the content. And last but not least, for super chats, Hunter Ache with the 20 United States dollar super chat. Dono or die. Wow. That's a little aggressive, but thank you all very much for the super chats. We appreciate that. We also got an offline donation from Crap on a Cracker.
Couple bucks, yeah.
Couple bucks, longtime listener, friend of the pod. He says, life's been busy the last few months, and I just caught up on all the missed episodes. So, boys, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and then some for AI fees and lost YouTube monetization for your uncontrollable potty mouths. Stumble. Got it. And the amount of bucks attached was a lot, in fact. 200 huge United States dollars from Crap on a Cracker. Wow. A little late Christmas present. We very much appreciate that, dude. That is extremely generous. We are very grateful. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you as well. Hope those were good. And yeah, we needed that little pick me up for being demonetized on all of our YouTube videos because we can't control ourselves. Very kind of you, for real, dude. That's super generous, and we really, really appreciate that a lot. So thank you very much, brother. And I hope you're continuing to do well.
And everybody else, thank you.
And all of you other guys, yeah. Once again, thank you. Now, quickly on the Patreon, once again, we have not started doing our COD bonus episodes yet because we were waiting for, perhaps naively, Season 1 Reloaded.
Yeah.
However, this morning, we did release one Patreon episode for our Platinum and above patrons, which is a patron Q&A. That is now live. So if you are a platinum or above patron, you could go listen to that right now. It was a good one, solid 90 minutes. Went into the weeds on a couple of the questions. I had a lot of fun, particularly talking about like history. That was cool.
Yeah,
was
start
cool
off with a
little
history
topic.
question, some classic food questions.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we answered a COD question, did we? I don't think we did.
We might have. I don't know.
I don't think. Not that we didn't answer it. I don't think we got one. I don't think we saw a COD question there.
Yeah, we answer what you guys ask, so those are kind of dictated by you guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, I enjoyed recording it. It is now live, so if you're a platinum or above patron, or if you wanted to listen to that, you could always join up. And then again, expect 4 more bonus eps to round out this month. But that is now available for you guys. And that's it. Let's hit the jingle and let's get into this sucker.
I wasn't ready for that. Wow. There we go.
Woo! He got him. I'm on my game today, man.
Well, I was getting ready to write down the timestamp for the announcements. It didn't have the right little button up. Rose jingling, huh? H with another $9.99. Hunter, $9.99 added on to his $19.99. H, thank you very much, buddy. We appreciate that, King.
Yes, H, thank you very much for the $10 more super chat. By the way, real quick, feel free to keep super chatting and donating. We will take it, but we're not going to thank anyone again until the end of the program. So just keep that in mind. We got to stay laser focused here. But H, thank you very much, dude, for another $10. All right, now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the Twitter incident. So, as I alluded to in the announcements, we have been making TikToks, quite a few of them, actually, for the past maybe 3 months now. We use a program called Opus, which is fairly expensive, but also, especially now, clearly worth it. We pay about $60 a month, and we get this AI website where we upload our podcast. It makes a ton of TikTok clips, and then we go in, pick the ones we like, edit them, and then post them.
Bro's doing an ad read for him, huh?
Well, they're a good service. Yeah, we should bill them. Anyways, one of those TikToks was picked up by a popular Twitter account called @IntelCDL. I think we should play the TikTok if we can pull it up, Tanner. Are we able to do that? Are we prepared to do that?
No.
And I should have thought about this sooner. So I'll find the link and tell me if you can pull it up. Just so we can start by giving everyone the context. Let's see.
We'll just play the audio. I'm not going to try to get this view all sorted and figured out for it, but we'll play the audio. Do you need the link? Yes, put it in there.
Okay. Here is the link. Yeah. And most of you are listening anyway, so there it is. You guys can just take a little listen and tell me when the audio is done, Tanner. This is the audio of the TikTok.
Okay, I need to know how loud this is going to be. All right, I'm going to start playing it.
Okay. Do you think Biffle could do pretty well in the CDL?
Of course he could.
A lot of CDL players always think they can't. I constantly see that argument. CDL players are always like maybe Biffle could compete, but he wouldn't even be close to a top player in the league. And it's like, they think he doesn't have the skill set. I'm sorry, I'll never agree with them, and I'll never fully understand their reasoning. But I think being the best Warzone player in the world is way more skillful than being the best CDL player in the world. Maybe that's a hot take for CDL players, but they act like there's so much strategy. You sit there and hold an angle and wait for some guy to run around the corner. How do you think Biffle would not be able to do that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And
you literally sit there and hold an angle.
Yes.
It's not that hard. So much more thought goes into playing Warzone, so much more strategy over the length of the match.
Do you think
it's over?
Okay. So that was the TikTok. This was first tweeted, to my knowledge, by again, Twitter account at Intel CDL. They have 338,000 followers. And the tweet says, with our video embedded, this guy thinks being the best Warzone player in the world is, quote, way more skillful than being the best CDL player. That tweet currently has 7 million views on Twitter. So it is safe to say it went pretty viral. And after this tweet happened, virtually every big news account was putting in their 2 cents and talking about this. We had Nadeshot quote tweet us. We had a Dexerto article written about us, about the clip. Pulse Check, they were talking about it. They showed it. Gamer Update, Jake Lucky were talking about it. Nadeshot as well. I think I just mentioned that. And others as well. Modern Warzone, Ghost of Hope, as we alluded to earlier. Many others. All the big, not all of, but the majority actually of the big Call of Duty commentators in the scene picked this up. Most of whom were not very happy with the take. They were not very happy with it.
They weren't too pleased with it, no.
Now, to be clear, some of the coverage, most of the coverage we got was just like, these people are either trolling or like doing it for views or whatever, or they're just like brain dead or whatever. So there were some people who had a little more nuance, namely Pulse Check. That podcast segment, I think, had some more nuance in it, and they tended to agree with us a little more, but still not totally. Mm-hmm. No one big was like, they're totally right or whatever, which is fine. So what we're going to do today is talk about all of the biggest, most common counter arguments we've been getting in response to the, in response to this TikTok and replying to those things. So I've written down a list of, I don't know, 6 or 7 common arguments that we've been hearing in response to our TikTok that people are disagreeing with. Now, I probably have missed some. We are certainly not going to respond to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that commented on this, because it's like actually thousands of people saying thousands of different things. So instead, I picked a couple of the common arguments, and I'm going to try and be as good faith to these people as possible in our response. But suffice to say, most of the discourse on this clip has been disagreement and very negative. Now, one thing I want to say as well before we get into it, a lot of people have been telling us, oh, the Flank has invited you guys to be on their podcast. So I said, okay, that's interesting. I watched the clip where this invite happened, and there were 5 people on the screen. One guy said, we should have them on. And then the other 4 said, no, and absolutely not. And we shouldn't give them a platform. And it would be like wrong of us to do that, or this is exactly what they wanted, blah, blah, blah. So as far as I'm concerned, that was not a real invitation. Now, having said that, if we got a real invitation from any of these big names who do shows or whatever, and they want us on, I'm happy to do it. I would let Tanner come or not come, obviously, on a case-by-case basis. But speaking for myself, I'd be willing to go on pretty much any of these things, provided they actually want me on. But like the Flank, it's like, if I'm going to go on, 4 of them don't want me there, and 1 of them does. Look, it's your guys' platform. If most of you don't want me here, I'm not going to come. I'm not going to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not a real invitation. I appreciate you guys letting us know that we were invited, but it to my eyes, it doesn't seem like a real invitation. So don't hold out your hopes for that. Now, another thing before I get into all these common arguments we've been hearing is that these guys are just trolling or they're just engagement baiting. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but let me say at the outset, no, we're not. We were not trolling. We were sort of engagement baiting. But I stand by what Tanner said in the clip that you all listened to and that everyone's talking about. I still agree CDL players, the best CDL players, the best Warzone players are better than the best CDL players. And I'm going to get into why right now. We were not trolling. We weren't doing it just for clicks or whatever. Now, the hyperbole we used, that was for engagement. It's a 60-second TikTok for a very complicated argument. Obviously, it doesn't have all of the nuance that we actually think it deserves. Duh. We can't make a whole argument about almost anything in 60 seconds. So yeah, we were missing some things. Yeah, we were lacking nuance. Yeah, we were being hyperbolic. Those things were on purpose and were for views and clicks, like people were accusing us of doing. That's true, obviously. The point of, hey, I don't enjoy making TikTok videos. That's why we outsource it to AI. I hate short form content, but it's smart to do it for exactly this reason. Get clicks and get views. But to say that that means we were trolling or we didn't mean what we said is not true. I do stand by the overall point. We were being hyperbolic. We'll get into details, but we do mean what we said. We were not trolling. We were doing it for engagement, but we were not trolling. So we'll start there.
Yeah, that's what short form content is for. I mean, our podcasts are usually at minimum an hour and 20 minutes. So it's like, to get more views or listens or eyes, you have to do short form content. So what happens is everything is generally taken more out of context because there's not enough time in a short form clip, but that's not what they're for. They're to get eyeballs, essentially. Yeah. And we'll have discussions about topics for 30 minutes and we have a 1 minute clip and everyone gets mad and like, well, this. And it's like, yeah, we said that. I agree with you, but that's not in the 1 minute TikTok you're watching. That was in the other 30 minutes we talked about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also to add to that, I am not upset that people are upset at the TikTok. The TikTok was crafted to be incendiary and inflammatory and make people mad because that's what gets clicks. We did that on purpose. Yes. Again, doesn't mean we didn't mean what we said, but for all of these people who are getting angry, I think some of them are getting, frankly, a little too angry. It's a video game. Let's relax. But, if it like upset you a little bit or whatever, I get it. I don't hold that against you. We get upset and react to TikToks all the time that sound insane. But maybe if we had more context or whatever, we wouldn't feel that way. So whatever. I get that. Anyway, that's enough preamble. Here are a couple of the common counter arguments that we heard that I do not think stand up to scrutiny, with maybe one exception. So again, we could be missing some, but these were the big ones that we remembered and wrote down. So in no particular order, by the way, one of them was, they think the CDL is just holding angles. Because in the TikTok clip, Tanner said, CDL is all about just holding an angle and Biffle would be able to do that. Okay. So obviously, this is hyperbole, like I was just saying. It is a literal TikTok clip. If you think that we think that being in the CDL literally only requires holding an angle, you're either 70 IQ or you're being bad faith. Anyone of average intelligence knows that when we say that, we don't mean it literally. And a lot of people who are too popular and who should know better were accusing us of literally holding that position. Of course, there is more to playing in the CDL than simply holding an angle. Duh. We were exaggerating. However, again, anyone who said that we think that literally is either bad faith or is being bad faith, or they're really, really dumb. But none of these big accounts that have been talking about us are that dumb. So come on. Obviously, we were being hyperbolic. We don't think it's literally just holding angles. The real point is that all of the skills that are required to be competitive in CDL, top Warzone players also have all of those skills. That's the more nuanced point. So, is there more to being a CDL pro than holding an angle? Of course there is. But all the other skills that are required to be a CDL player, the top Warzone players also have all of those skills, including holding angles. And also, if we didn't use some hyperbole, so some of you might be getting mad right now, like, oh, well, if you didn't mean that, then why'd you say it? Why were you being hyperbolic? To get you to listen right now, because otherwise you wouldn't even be here, dude. Duh. To get clicks, again. Of course. That's why we did it. And it worked. No one would be talking about this, including us right now, if we weren't hyperbolic in the clip. So I'm glad we were. And it was so obvious that we were being hyperbolic that it wasn't a dishonest thing to say. Because it's a clear and obvious exaggeration.
Well, it's
again, go ahead.
That's the thing with little clips too, is like people that have been listening to us for a few years know how sarcastic we are and how much we exaggerate things. And that's the show. That's what makes it entertaining for people. People like that. That's what they think is funny. Do I believe that? Yes, to an extent. But like if again, people watch a 60-second clip and then that's what they get from it. But it's like, dude, we've been doing this for 3 years. This is how we are with everything. I don't know how many times I've said Warzone is the worst game I've ever played in my life. Do I actually mean it? No. But things like that, it's funnier to listen to than just say, oh yeah, like Warzone's like a decent game. It's pretty good. Gives you talking points. It keeps people interested. Things like that. That's just the way it is. And that's the way I am as a person, because I'm not fake on the podcast. That's just how I am, right? So It's like, I exaggerate. And that's the way it is. Like, more than anything, the holding the angle thing was like poking fun at. The clip in my mind when I said that was when MW3 first came out and all the K-BAM players got pissed at that one clip of some dude in the CDL laying prone on a staircase and getting AA on like 3 guys and getting 3 nasty kills. Well, he was just laying there and they all ran around the corner. When I say something like that, that's what I'm thinking in my head, you know? It's more poking fun at like the aim assist drag conversations we always have, running around a corner, you get aim assist drag, you kill the guy, blah, blah. That's what it is. Like, you're just stupid if you think I don't actually think CDL players like move around the map. Like, come on. How, I mean, it's not even like just search or anything. How would you do that in hardpoint or something? Like, just, you know, it's pretty easy to understand, I would think, but people seem to not be understanding that part of it.
Yeah, and just to be crystal clear, so Geo in chat just said, so you guys are just taking it what you said back.
Nope.
So you mean what you say but exaggerated? Make it make sense. Okay, dude, I'll try one more time. When we said the CDL is only holding angles and that's all you need to do, that was an exaggeration. When we said that Warzone players at the top are better than CDL players at the top, we meant that. And we're not exaggerating when we said that. Duh. Is that clear enough for you to understand the point? I hope so, but maybe it's not.
And if you keep listening, Gio, we're going to talk. That's like the last part we're going to talk about walking it back like you think we're doing, because we're not.
Spoiler alert, we're not walking it back.
Yeah, hey, I'll tell you right now so we're clear. I think Biffle is probably one of, if not the most skilled Call of Duty player in the world right now, just so we're clear. Just so we're clear, right? And I think he can go into the CDL and absolutely dominate because he's an insane player.
Yeah. So, again, yeah, we are not going to be walking the real point back, which is, yeah, again, Top Warzone players better than the top CDL players. But let's move on to another common refrain we have gotten. Warzone is just pub stomping. Any CDL player could do that. This was the most offensive to me as a human being with like a brain. Obviously, CDL players can farm pubs in Warzone. Duh. We're talking about custom tournaments against other competitive Warzone players. Obviously. Because, of course, CDL players are going to do well in public matches of Warzone, just like competitive Warzone players are going to roll through public matches of Hardpoint in unranked multiplayer. Duh. Obviously. How anyone thought this. Luckily, none of the big accounts were saying this. I didn't hear anyone of the big accounts saying Warzone is just pub stomping. They knew that we were obviously referring to competitive Warzone tournaments. Duh.
I mean,
It would be absurd for us to say that CDL players can't pub stomp in Warzone. Of course. No one's talking about that. You're comparing, again, it would be like us saying Biffle and Booyah and whatever Warzone pros, Huskers, couldn't go win a Hardpoint unranked pubs match right now. If he changed the input, maybe. In unranked multiplayer. No shit. Mm-hmm. So I can't believe this was even being said.
I think it was.
And it was being said a lot. So you should feel bad if that was your argument.
I mean, I think it was maybe Octane, who's a CDL player. I think he still plays, I'm pretty sure. I think he kind of meant the same thing, though, when he said, like, Warzone pubs is getting to your head or something. I think he was kind of...
We'll get to that, yeah.
But I think basically what he was saying was this, is that Warzone competitive is pub stomping, which is obviously not true. Yeah, like, yes, they pub stomp, but there are custom tournaments, just so you are aware, Octane. Custom tournaments exist. There was something last year. It's called the World Series of Warzone. It was a LAN tournament. It was in London. It was on a custom match. They didn't all fly to London and play in a public match. No, it was customs, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there are... And I was listening to Pulse Check this morning when they were talking about this. And I didn't know this even, but I believe Joe-O. I trust Joe-O over me. Obviously, he's more in the scene than I am. Joe-O was saying there are custom Warzone tournaments with competitive players literally every single day. I didn't know they were that common, but I mean,
almost
Joe-O
every day, yeah.
Know.
Little $2,000 tournament here, 5,000 here. Yeah, they happen pretty often. I think they kind of died off in Warzone too, but they seem to be back now.
Yeah. So that is obviously what we were referring to, not pub stomping. It's completely unrelated to anything we were talking about. So you should feel bad if that was your argument ever. What was another one? Oh, this was another fun one. No Warzone players could go win a game against a CDL team right now in insert their favorite mode. Hardpoint, search, whatever. So the argument, again, I saw this far too often, was get the best 4 Warzone players right now and put them against Optic in Hardpoint on LSELO, and they would get stomped.
Good observation.
Great observation. Hey, I agree with you, man. That wasn't our point, though. Obviously, if you take Warzone players who have not been scrimming for 10 hours a day for months in the game, on the mode, on the maps, they're going to get rolled. Yeah. What we meant was if the top Warzone players started practicing for as often as CDL teams do, for as long as CDL teams do, then they would do really, really, really well and would not get stomped. But of course, if they just tried to today, having never played Hardpoint in MW3 ranked rule set before, yeah, they'd probably get stomped. That does not serve your argument at all, though. We obviously mean if they had practice to do it. Duh. So again, I couldn't believe this was an argument.
Because I agree with you, man. That's like the thing, is there are so many people getting mad and saying these things, but I'm like, dude, I agree with you there. I 100% agree with you. In that same regard, you take a 4-stack from CDL and you put them in a custom match tournament, and one of the team in Warzone in the custom match tournament is Biffle, Shifty, Skullface, and Soka. Who's winning that tournament? Not the CDL team, right? They couldn't go into that tournament tomorrow and win that. That's not happening. The same way a stack is not going to the CDL today and simply taking over the scene. But you are, when you're making that argument, you're trying to take away the individual talent that a lot of these extremely talented Warzone players have. Biffle, Shifty, to name a couple. Soka. They are so talented. I mean, like Jake linked that one clip of Biffle, I think it was that Warzone win. I don't know if it was on Verdansk with aim assist off. He's so insane. The fact that he can do that with aim assist off in Warzone and drop that many kills, god damn is he talented, right? So they're taking away the talent from players like that and pretending like with practice Biffle could not compete in the CDL. Be realistic. He could be a top player if he wanted to put in the time and go to the CDL. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen today, obviously, and we've never thought that and we never said that. He's just, you're trying to take away the talent of these best players though, and I think that's just incorrect.
And that's true for not just Biffle, by the way, which I'm going to get into in a second. But people are like, oh, you guys are cherry picking. Like Biffle's the only one. I don't think that, but we'll get into that right now. Another common little counter argument we've been hearing a lot. This one, a lot, is Scump won the World Series of Warzone without any Warzone practice. Okay. So first of all, this is just wrong. It's not true. Scump won a solo YOLO very early on in Warzone. And
Verdansk.
It was on Verdansk. It was years ago. And it was also just a single match. And it was in fact not the World Series of Warzone. I don't think it was even an official Activision sanctioned event, which doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't competitive, because it was, but it wasn't World Series of Warzone. It was the solo YOLO. It was solos, and it was very early on. He did also play in the World Series of Warzone, but he didn't win. He got 30th. Oops. Oopsies. So to all of you saying Scump won the World Series of Warzone, he got 30th, actually. He didn't win the World Series of Warzone. Now, to be clear, Scump's a very good player, and I'm not taking anything away from him. And I think winning the solo YOLO is very impressive, especially because he wasn't being a Riot Shield rat like most of the kids in that lobby were.
Yep.
That's great. But a solo YOLO in Verdansk is not really indicative of what competitive Warzone is now. Let's not forget how new Warzone is. And especially let's not forget how new competitive Warzone is. Competitive Call of Duty multiplayer has been around for way longer than competitive Warzone.
For 18, 20 years,
yeah, I don't think anyone would argue that a solo Warzone tournament is indicative of what competitive Warzone is now. Because competitive Warzone now is trios, maybe quads, but it's certainly not solos. So starting there. And while we're on the subject of CDL players who have participated in competitive Warzone, Huke, I believe is how his name is pronounced. He had according to someone on Pulse Check, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this is true. Huke and his team of CDL players got dead last in the last chance qualifiers as well. And the last chance qualifiers is, according to whoever said this, the worst of the best. And that CDL team got dead last. So if you want to get mad that we cherry picked Biffle because he's an outlier, I'll just say Scump is a cherry pick for you as well and is also an outlier. And he's not even indicative of someone who came to Warzone and dominated by winning solo YOLOs, because that is not a good representation of what competitive Warzone is. So, to be clear. Now, again, I'm not shitting on Scump or Huke or his teammates. And it's not that surprising that a bunch of CDL players coming to Warzone get destroyed. Again, I would imagine the same thing would happen if a bunch of Warzone players with insufficient practice just tried to play CDL hardpoint. They would probably get rolled too. As many of you have pointed out to us and we just talked about. Yeah, you need to practice also. It's not just like you come over and win, duh. But yeah, the Scump won World Series of Warzone, therefore it's automatically true that CDL players are better than Warzone players. Again, does not stand up to scrutiny. So
yeah, I did see some Warzone competitive players talking about this. They're like, come on, we need to stop using the solo YOLO as like a gauge for anything in Warzone. Like, come on, everyone knows it's like the biggest joke. I mean, it's half of it. It's like people literally let their friends kill them, so they have that happened at the World Series of Warzone this year. I think it was Skull won the solo YOLO, I believe, right? Somebody in chat can correct me on that. I think Skullface won, and somebody let Skull kill him in the gulag, right? Was it Sage?
Right, yeah.
Who was it that let Skullface kill him? So that's the type it is. It's one match out of the whole tournament. It's like supposed to be kind of a joke, something funny, something fun to throw in there. No one ever thinks it's competitive. I mean, that's a ridiculous response to everything, and that is probably the biggest one we keep saying is Scump won the solo YOLO. Let's be clear, Scump is probably undeniably the best Call of Duty player of all time and may always, keep that.
Hold that title, yeah.
Yeah, but that one solo YOLO, come on, let's just stop. That really doesn't mean anything. It's because CDL players love talking about how Warzone is RNG, and we 100% agree. Warzone is very RNG. All BRs are. A solo YOLO is the most RNG of them all, right? I mean, that's the most RNG, least competitive round of Warzone you can possibly have. So let's stop using that. Scump's insane. Scump's the best player in the world and will always be the best Call of Duty player in the world, probably. That doesn't mean much, though. Doesn't mean much. Now, could Scump form a team and be in his prime and be the best team in Warzone? Yeah, probably. Again, that's something we also never said, but people are kind of insinuating.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's another thing, just as a quick aside. People think that because we think the best Warzone players are better than the best CDL players, when we say that, they think we also mean or are implying that you don't have to be good to be in the CDL. That's another, implicit argument people have made or people think. That is not what we're saying. You have to be really good to be a CDL player, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy to do, of course. And you have to be very, very skilled to do it. Our point is that you have to be even more skilled to be the very best Warzone player. That's what we're saying. Not that CDL players take no skill, just that it takes a lot of skill, but slightly less than being the best Warzone players. And we'll get more into that as we go on. But we're not denigrating the skill of being in the CDL. You have to be insane to be
they're in the pro league of Call of Duty multiplayer. Obviously, they are the best players in Call of Duty multiplayer, right? Yeah, duh.
Yeah, and that would translate to Warzone, like Tanner said, if they put together a team and really practiced it. But we still think that the best Warzone players are, as far as Call of Duty in general players go, are better. Not by a mile, but they are. That's our opinion, and we'll get more into that as we go on. But yeah, a lot of people were getting mad that we cherry picked Biffle. Like, oh, you guys picked the only competitive Warzone player that could hang in the CDL. First of all, that's not true. All of the top Warzone players could compete in the CDL if they had the practice and a team. Number one. And number two, they'll say that and then cherry pick Scump talking about the solo YOLO, which isn't even a good argument. Yeah. So let's keep that in mind. Next argument we heard a lot. Custom Warzone tournaments is also just holding angles, like you said CDL is. The only difference is you have to get to a building first, and then you just hold angles. So it's equally unskilled. And in fact, Nadeshot kind of sort of made a similar argument. He had a quote tweet on the CDL Intel tweet, and he had actually a very nice tweet. I appreciated it.
He's a mature adult, yeah.
He's a grown man. And by the way, shout out to Nadeshot. We have sung his praises on this program numerous times. We respect Nadeshot. We always have. He's a grown-ass man. He's made a ton of great business decisions, and he's leveraged his former involvement in the CDL to make like this company that is wildly successful. And he's like he's doing super well. And we've talked about this a lot before. And anyways, it's no surprise that he had a good, response to our clip. Obviously he disagreed with us, but in his quote tweet of the clip, he was like, basically constructed this hypothetical scenario where, CDL's hard, and in Warzone, you just pray for final circle and then you win. And it was a bit of an exaggeration as well, but that's fair play because our clip was also an exaggeration, as we've gone over. And that is kind of a similar argument to what a lot of other people have been saying, which is, again, can be boiled down to custom tourney Warzone is also just holding angles. You just get to like final circle first and then you do it. So it's equally unskilled by your logic, they would say to us. My response to that, to Nadeshot and to all of you, is placement alone is not going to win you any tournaments anymore. There have been different formats for scoring in Warzone, but only very early on were Warzone tournaments based solely on placement
alone. That was
alone.
Mostly Verdansk, maybe a little bit into Caldera, but mostly Verdansk. A lot of tournaments were ran that way.
That's correct. And it's not run that way anymore. So if in fact all you did was pray for final circle, get to an advantageous position and hold an angle, and then place first in Warzone and think you're going to win a tournament that way, you're just wrong. Kills matter more in contemporary competitive Warzone than placement does. If you get first place in a custom Warzone lobby and you don't have any kills, by most formats, you will literally have gotten first place and earned literally 0 points because they use a multiplier system.
That's how the World Series of Warzone was, yeah.
So if you got first place by praying for final circle and holding angles and didn't get any kills, you wouldn't get any score. So that is not how you win or do well as a competitive Warzone player. You have to get kills. And even if you get first place and only like 5 kills or whatever, that's still not getting you in the top 5 in terms of score. So this is just a bad argument that all custom Warzone tournaments is also just holding angles. It's just not true because you have to get kills to win. That's how the scoring system is built.
Yeah.
And we can, by the way, if you guys want to pull up the World Series of Warzone stats and look at who the winners were, did they win on placement or did they win on getting buckets of kills on other extremely skilled competitive Warzone players. The latter. They got buckets of kills. They got far more kills than everyone else in the lobby.
I mean, that
is why they won. That is why they won the World Series of Warzone, because they outkilled other skilled, highly skilled, competitive Warzone players in a custom LAN lobby, and that's how they won. They didn't win by praying for final circles and holding angles. That is absurd. And we can literally look at the statistics for the last biggest Warzone tournament, competitive Warzone tournament of all time to fact check this. You have to get kills.
Biffle,
you have to
Shifty,
be aggressive.
Sage, they dropped it. They placed so much higher because of how many kills they had. They had an insane amount of kills against, over 100 of the best Warzone players in the world. Yeah. But yeah, the like a common argument I would always see as well is like, don't talk on a subject you don't know anything about. Talking about us in the CDL. I don't know very much about the CDL. You're absolutely right. But then that person would also say, like in the same tweet, like Warzone is literally the same thing. You just hold a building and get placement. Well, now you're talking about something you don't know about, right? So don't say that to me when you're making an incorrect statement in that same sentence. Because you don't know how Warzone works at that point. Because every single tournament now, there's placement modifiers. World Series of Warzone. 1 kill was 1 point. Then there were placement modifiers. If you got first place, you got 2 times multiplier. Second place, 1.8. Third, 1.6. And then so on. So you cannot simply just stay alive until the end with 2 kills and do well. We've seen those tournaments before. They're insane how close teams are. I remember OP Mark's POV from the Verdansk one where there were 80 people left maybe in like
that was
5th,
crazy.
6th circle. Everyone's just hiding. Crazy ending. But something like that comes down to, yes, there is of course skill involved like anything, but that is pretty RNG where the rotation ends up pulling to. But it's all, you don't need to kill anybody. It's just whoever can essentially kind of rat the hardest and stay alive and win a couple gunfights in order to get that placement. So that's not how tournaments are anymore.
Exactly.
Thankfully.
Yeah, that's not indicative of what competitive Warzone is or what it requires to win. You have to kill other really good teams. So that takes a tremendous amount of skill. And I thought that argument was specious. So
hello there. Today's episode is brought to you by our Patreon, where we offer our members and all of our episodes early access and ad-free. Starting at just $5 a month at the gold tier, patrons get a unique Discord role as well as 3 raw, uncensored Call of Duty bonus episodes every month, in addition to every bonus episode we've ever done in the past. The first episodes this month, we have not recorded. We were waiting for Season 1 Reloaded. It's just finally here, a multiplayer ranked play, updates to Warzone, the nuke is in the game. We're going to get grinding on those this next week, and we will have 3 Call of Duty episodes done by the end of the month. They're going to be pumped out next week. You get all of those for $5. At $10 a month, Platinum gets you everything from that gold tier alongside 1 Q&A episode, which we already recorded, and you can listen to right this very second. Damascus, $20 a month and gets all that, plus a behind-the-scenes episode every month, which is going to be a banger probably this month, by the way. A Damascus-only patron hangout and access to the Discord Damascus Lounge. If you hate hearing this ad, sign up for our Patreon today. Let's get back to the show.
Next, we're a couple... Now we're going to get a little personal. So these final 3 here, well, we have one more after that, actually. But a couple of these are some personal attacks we received that we want to address. So number 1 is, I heard this on the flank, one of the detractors, one of the 4 out of 5 people there. Well, they all disagree with us, but one of the ones that was vehement said they're just lockdown gamers. And they went to our Twitter account and they were like, oh, I bet you the account was created in 2020. And I guess it was actually created in 2021, so L. But anyways, they're just lockdown gamers was the argument. So
I think I saw that one. I'm aware of who that guy is.
So, first of all, this is what we call an ad hominem. If this were true, it wouldn't have any bearing on the validity of our actual argument. We could, in fact, be lockdown gamers, as you said, but that wouldn't make us, that alone wouldn't make us wrong. That wouldn't make our argument wrong. It's literally called an ad hominem. But that's fine. Let's also address it. We're not really lockdown gamers, actually. Tanner and I started playing COD together in Black Ops 4. Now, you guys can go Google when that game came out. I believe it was 2018, before the lockdown, before some Chinese guy ate a pangolin. In fact, it was before COVID even existed, let alone a lockdown happened. So not only were we playing COD before the lockdown, but we also started the podcast before the lockdown started. So unless you think that Tanner and I bioengineered a virulent coronavirus to then get people to stay in their houses and listen to podcasts more, which I don't think anyone thinks, then we are not just lockdown gamers. And further, it's not like BO4 was the first Call of Duty game either of us ever played. We're both 31 years old. We've been playing Call of Duty for a long time. I played BO4. That was my first one on KBAM, and that's when we started the podcast. And the first time Tanner and I played together. But I mean, before that, I played COD growing up on Xbox. Starting with, I think, COD 4 or MW 2. And I played here and there some of the titles. I took a break for a couple years when I was like in college and whatever. But especially Tanner. I mean, Tanner's been playing Call of Duty for what, 20 years? You started by playing competitive before there was crossplay, obviously, and all that stuff.
I mean, like literally at my parents' house still, my mom may have finally gotten rid of them. I had the COD 1, 2, and 4, CDs for PC, because I played on PC back then. So, I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, he says that, but it's like, all right, I only know who you are from literally becoming popular during COVID, from making little, like, 60-second news clips on, here's what Raven changed in the update today. So it's like, it's funny that you're calling us lockdown gamers. I'm like, you built your whole audience on making little TikTok 30-second clips just talking about like the patch notes and not even giving your input. So, okay. I mean, it's a big
which is fine to do.
Yeah, but it's just funny that he's saying that to us. I'm like, I've probably... Yeah. I'm like, I played COD 1, 2, and 4. Half of these kids that watch the CDL have probably never even played COD 4 because they're so young. Definitely not Call of Duty 2 or the original COD.
And I bet you 90% of them don't even know, because they always say, oh, Call of Duty is a controller game. It was made for controllers. No, it wasn't. COD 1, COD 2, maybe COD 3 even, were PC only, keyboard and mouse only. So Call of Duty is a controller game. It is now, to be clear, but it wasn't always that way. And Tanner, in fact, was playing when it was COD 1, keyboard and mouse only. So we're not just lockdown gamers. We've been playing for a long time. But also, it wouldn't matter if we were. I just thought it was funny and worth responding to because it was funny. And by the way, our podcast, in case it wasn't obvious to those of you listening, and if all you saw was that TikTok, it probably wouldn't be obvious. This podcast we made for casuals. This is a casuals podcast. Like, The Flank, for example, is all about CDL stuff, right? Mm. That's not a podcast for casual Call of Duty players. It's a podcast for CDL fans. So these are more hardcore Call of Duty players than our audience generally is. Although a lot of our audience plays a ton and is into the CDL because we're wildly successful, much to the chagrin of many of our detractors. But people are so mad we have a Patreon, by the way. You should see what we make on Patreon if you really want to get angry. Maybe we'll publicize it. We won't. But oh my God, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying, Tanner? Do you know?
I mean, the lockdown thing, it's probably something to do with like,
our podcast is for casuals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, the flank is for like CDL enjoyers, whatever. Our podcast is literally for casuals. Tanner and I are above average Call of Duty casual players. That's who we make content for. So, keep that in mind as well. We're not pretending we're an authority on the CDL. Never were. But I think we know enough to make the argument. Warzone players are better. Oops. Sorry. So we'll get more into that. But yeah. What else was I going to say?
We got lucky because of COVID. I don't know if you really said that. We started the pod 30, 45 days before COVID hit the United States, I think.
We did get
so
lucky,
we got incredibly lucky. Yeah, thank you, COVID, for that. It helped us a lot.
We built this podcast on a pile of corpses. Yeah.
We don't have blood on our hands. That wasn't our fault, but
it wasn't our
fault,
just
got
to
lucky.
Be clear.
Yeah.
So anyway, the lockdown gamers thing. I don't know, just super weird. But anyway, another one where we were, I think, personally attacked. Pubs have gotten to your heads. like playing public Warzone or whatever. That was, I didn't see this a bunch, but there was a popular account that tweeted this and a bunch of people agreed with it. So I think it is worth talking about a little bit. Hey, in the TikTok, or in any of the 393 episodes we've ever done, Tanner and I have never claimed to be professional players in Warzone, in CDL, in ranked multiplayer, or anything of the kind. We haven't even implied it. We are under no illusions that we are not good enough to be in the CDL or in Warzone competitive scene, and we've never claimed to be, or even close to it. We are, as I said, in our 30s. We enjoy Call of Duty. We're better than average, but we're pretty casual. And that's who we make content for. So I think when you, and I don't even know exactly what pubs have gotten your heads means, but what I think it means is he thinks that we do well in pubs and we think we could be in the CDL. That's kind of the implication that I'm getting. Maybe that's not what he meant, but let me be super clear. We do not think we could compete in the CDL. I'm right now, I'm a 2 KD. I'm a 2 or a 2.7 KD in Warzone.
Depending on where
I don't know which, because the leaderboard has one stat, and then when I look at my own stats, it has another stat. So I'm either a 2.0 or a 2.7 right now in unranked pubs Warzone. I am under no illusions that I would be competitive in the competitive Warzone scene or in the CDL, obviously. And I never said or implied that. And again, has nothing to do with our argument. Also, just to put the nail in the coffin, Tanner and I play on keyboard and mouse. So we could be the best players in the world, and we still wouldn't be competitive in the CDL, especially. The best keyboard and mouse player on earth would not be competitive in the CDL.
They wouldn't
with
even
all of
compete
the
in
controllers
challengers.
with aim assist.
Yeah.
They wouldn't make challengers, actually. Doesn't matter. So this is a giga moot point, and I don't know why. And again, I don't know exactly what pubs have gotten to your heads was supposed to have meant, but in case that is what he meant, no, it hasn't.
Yeah, there were.
I know where I stand.
There were lots of things that were being said, these guys can't even hit. They wouldn't even be able to compete in a. I don't know, like multiplayer ranked matches. By the way, and I'm I don't know why you think I ever said that. That's why I don't play multiplayer ranked, man. We played it a little bit. One, I don't like multiplayer COD anymore. It's dead to me, and it's been pretty much dead to me since Warzone came out, because Warzone's a lot more fun in my opinion, and interesting to play, and different, and not as repetitive. But you're right. I can't compete against these 19-year-olds on Adderall with the best aim I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, and I've never claimed I could, and I would not ever claim that I'd be able to do that. Now, it doesn't mean we can't have an opinion on the subject. The same way you're having an opinion on the subject, you listening.
Yeah,
you can't compete in Warzone ranked probably, but you're just giving your opinion. CDL. We're giving ours. Yeah. But yeah,
exactly.
Believe it or not, there were quite a few people saying something along those lines, and it's like, why? Again, this is what happens when you post a 60-second clip. A lot of things are said and taken completely out of context. I mean, just completely. There's like one at the end that we'll get to also, that it's like somebody thinks they're proving a point, and I'm like, we've said that 100 times on the podcast, but thanks for saying that too. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually such a good point. For everyone who replied to that "pubs have gotten your heads" tweet and agreed with it, the implication there is that you can. It's also like you can't have an opinion unless you're a competitive player in Warzone or CDL. It's like, okay, if that's true, literally none of you can have an opinion either. Like a lot of people were saying, who even are these guys? Like, what makes them an authority on whether CDL players are better or Warzone players are better? They're not an authority because they are not competitors themselves. Everyone who ever said that, by the way, also not a competitor in CDL or Warzone and couldn't be. So you have an opinion while you're telling us we can't have an opinion for the same reason that you also can't have an opinion. Have you not connected those dots? Great point, Tanner. Glad you brought that up. True. Yeah. Hey, if we're not allowed to have an opinion because we're not qualified, neither are any of you other dipshits, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're in the CDL or competitive Warzone, I guess you're not allowed to have an opinion either if you think we're not allowed to have one. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, who are these guys, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, you're right. We're just two guys that bought equipment and started doing a podcast. You can do the same thing, man. Try to get people to listen to it. That's fine.
Yeah, good luck.
Go ahead, try it. It's not
viral,
it's not that
buddy.
hard. Do it. Just build an audience and start talking. Anybody can do it, right? We're not stopping you from making a podcast, buddy. Go ahead and try it. See how it works for you.
Yeah. So anyways, again, to be clear, I still don't know exactly what "pubs have gotten your heads" even means. So whatever. And then another one. This was a fun one for me. They're going to walk it back. Watch.
Again, they've never listened.
Oh boy.
Yeah. They've never listened.
Yeah, bros have never listened to this podcast. If you think, again, Tanner and I are 31 years old. Listen, we've been on the internet a long time. I have been doing content creation, mostly unsuccessfully until this podcast, a long time. I am not afraid of whatever just happened happening. In fact, I'm thrilled about it. As many people have pointed out, that was in fact the point of making the TikTok, was to get people's eyeballs on it. And if people are mad about it, I do not care. And people saying, oh, they're going to walk it back because they're afraid of the negative backlash. That's what I have to say to you. No, super wrong. The only way I would walk back this position is if I heard a good argument for why it's wrong. Not because I kowtow to social pressure from mean tweets and mean videos. Hey, bro, we're all talking, and let's put this in perspective. Again, I'm a little older. I'm able to do this. Let's put this in perspective. We are talking about a video game, a recreational activity that doesn't have any real world implications and ultimately doesn't matter, right? This argument, whether we're right or whether other people are right, whether CDL players are better or Warzone players are better, none of it actually matters at all. It doesn't. Now, I'm still going to stand firm in what I think, and we're going to get into a couple more things here. But if you were under the misapprehension that Tanner and I were going to be like, oh no, some CDL guy said we're dumb, we're going to walk it back, you are outside of your goddamn mind. Obviously, that's not happening. Again, I'm willing to walk back any argument I make if I am proven wrong, or if someone makes a good argument to convince me otherwise, as everyone should be, open-minded. But to just say we're going to walk it back just because people are mad at it is absurd and hilarious. And if you were hoping for a walk back so that you could point and laugh, sorry. Not happening. I still think the best Warzone players are more skilled than the best CDL players. One other thing we were seeing, by the way, is that Warzone is so much more RNG than CDL. This is obviously true. You can't dispute that. And I hate how RNG Warzone is. Trust me, when I get landed on by some guy who happened to have found a redeploy pack earlier on in the match, and I down and finish him, and then he comes back immediately with a 45 round SVA with a red dot on it, lands on me with no audio, and then kills me. And then I watch the kill cam and I literally see him respawning, and I've just been punished for getting a kill due to nothing but RNG. Hey, no one's more upset about it than me, buddy. Trust me, I know Warzone's RNG. We both do. We talk about it all the time and how much we hate it and how it does, to some degree, detract from the competitive integrity of Warzone. I agree with that. However, that is also part of what makes people who consistently win in Warzone, despite RNG trying to screw them over, so impressive. Because they do have to overcome RNG if they want to consistently place and consistently do well. I think anyone virtually, within reason, can win one match of Warzone because they get lucky RNG. However, if you spread that out over 100 matches, no one's winning 100 matches or the most of 100 matches because of RNG. You have to be able to contend with the RNG to be as consistent as these top competitive Warzone players are. So we don't disagree that Warzone's more RNG than CDL. It absolutely is. But that doesn't take away from how good Biffle is and how despite how RNG it is and not competitive at all, he still somehow manages to win all the time. Huh, that's weird. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe it takes a lot of skill to do that. If you're fighting, for example, in the 6th circle in a customs Warzone tournament on Urzikstan, a map you've been playing all year, you have very likely never been in that exact circle before. Even if you've played 12 hours of Warzone a day for 6 months. That particular circle and that particular rotation and where you were before that circle closed and where the 5th circle was in relation to the 6th circle and where other teams are in relationship to you, no matter how much you play, once you get to a particular 6th circle, it is virtually impossible that you've ever been in that exact situation before. And to be able to do well in that environment where the landscape's always changing, it requires a more generalized level of skill, whereas in multiplayer or CDL, you're on a very familiar map and the landscape is not changing that much every single time, and it doesn't require as much adaptability as being a good Warzone player because of that RNG to some degree. So yeah, sometimes the RNG degrades the competitive integrity. But being able to be consistent despite that, it requires being really adaptable and really generally good in a way that CDL does not require as much. Obviously, being a great CDL player requires some adaptability, and the landscape changes somewhat. 1v4 in S&D or whatever. It's not always that exact situation. You're not always in exactly that spot, blah, blah, blah. But you're always playing on one of 6 maps that you've been scrimming 10 hours a day. And those maps are a lot smaller than Urzikstan. So, it requires more adaptability to be consistently good in Warzone. And I think that takes more skill than being a top CDL player. And again, not to say being a top CDL player is easy. No one's saying that. It's still very hard and you still have to be very good, but not quite as good as being a top Warzone player.
And just so we're clear, I think when we say top Warzone player, some people may be under the assumption that we're talking about everybody in the World Series of Warzone. No. When we say top Warzone players, I don't even know what the number would be. You'd have to be very, very, very involved in both competitive scenes, I think, to put a number on that. But it's probably it's probably around 10 of the Warzone players could be very, very good in CDL. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's over 2 CDL teams. So, and I'm not even saying those 10 would be the top 10 best CDL players in the world. I'm just saying they could compete in the CDL. They have the skill set to do that. And I don't think people should continue to try to take that away from those players. Because, they are, they're very highly skilled. You're right. And, CDL, I think you have to have more gunny since you're constantly getting in gunfights. I mean, it's constant gunfights. That's what it is. On the same hand, though, it's a lower time to kill. It's a lot faster time to kill. So, that would take some adaptability, obviously, but they would get there the same way Warzone players would get there in the CDL as well.
I kind of disagree that CDL takes more gunny. You kind of are in more gunfights.
Well, you're definitely in more gunfights. That's without a doubt. Think Hardpoint. They're getting way more kills. They're constantly in gunfights. That's all it is. You respawn, get in a gunfight. Spawn, get in a gunfight.
Yeah, maybe.
That's without a doubt, I would say, yeah.
Well, look at the World Series of Warzone winners. How many seconds per minute were they in a gunfight? Probably pretty comparable to a CDL team.
No.
For certain modes. So. It depends on the modes. Anyway, it doesn't matter though. My main point is because the time to kill is so much slower in Warzone, you need to be accurate over a longer period of time, and also usually at a greater distance. So that takes arguably more gunny than a multiplayer CDL engagement where you're generally going to be closer to your enemy than in Warzone. And also the time to kill is way less. So you don't have to be as consistently on target. And there's less outplayability when the time to kill is lower, which we've beaten to death as a point in other contexts. So I don't know if I would agree that CDL takes more gunny, frankly. I think that's an interesting conversation, but it's kind of beside the point either way because the adaptability, again, of having to adjust to a changing landscape every single game, in every single situation, is that takes a tremendous amount of generalized skill, and you don't have to have that in CDL, or at least to the same degree.
That's, I think, the best way to put it is everything in the CDL, for the most part, is pretty predictable. You're having the same gunfights over and over again. You've got some strats for search on how you're defending, how you're attacking. But for the most part, it's you're fighting people in the same areas on the same maps constantly.
On the same head
RNG
glitches,
goes both ways, of course. But yeah, being able to adapt to that constantly in Warzone, I think, is what makes it difficult. Because you could be in what you think is a really good spot, and the circle pull could be just horrendous for you, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just unlucky. So being able to win tournaments constantly, I think that really shows how much skill those players have.
Yeah. And to be clear, you're not playing against total burgers in the World Series of Warzone. I mean,
WAG was there, but yeah, aside from that, everybody was pretty good.
Besides Wagnificent, yeah, confirmed cheater. So burger, sure, whatever. Anyways, one thing I also said on Twitter to Nadeshot, he never replied to this, and I'm curious why. I have a hypothesis, and I don't know if it's true, but hear me out. My hypothesis is the top 10 best Warzone players make more money from all revenue streams each year than the top 10 best CDL players do from all revenue streams each year. The primary reason for that is not salary or earnings. They make some earnings in Warzone, but not as much as CDL winners probably. Although maybe that's not true. I don't know. But also they don't have any salary, whereas CDL players do. However, Warzone players don't have to scrim for hours a day. So they're able to stream way more. And streaming brings in a tremendous amount of money for these Warzone competitors. As an example, FIFA Kill, a Warzone competitor, right now has 10,000 Twitch subs, which is at minimum 25,000 United States dollars a month in Twitch subs alone, which is not counting any tournament earnings he's going to get or has gotten, any bits, any donations, any sponsorships, or any ad revenue. That's crazy, right? So again, my hypothesis is that the top 10 best Warzone players from all the revenue streams they have make more every year than the top 10 best CDL players. If that is true, because I don't know if this is true, it's impossible for me to figure out. And if anyone in the know has an answer on this, please let me know, because I'm very curious. But my hypothesis is that that's the case. And if that's true, it would imply that the players who are good enough to be top 10 in either Warzone or CDL would go to Warzone, since that's where they'd make more money. And if that's true, you can conclude that the best Call of Duty players overall who are good enough to be the best in either avenue are going to be Warzone players, because that's where they would make more money and have a less stressful life. Also, by the way, they don't have to like scrim for hours a day and stuff. I don't know if that hypothesis is correct, but if it is, it would lend further credence to my argument that the best Call of Duty players are Warzone players, not CDL players. Now, if anyone knows, and I'm not asking any of you in chat, because none of you know either. This is not public information. But if we go viral again or whatever, if anyone in the know, like, I don't know, Nadeshot or all these big accounts, actual CDL players, have any inkling as to who's making more money, the top 10 CDL players from all revenue or the top 10 Warzone players, I would be very interested to know. And if the top if the top 10 Warzone players are making more money than the top 10 CDL players, then it begs the question, why wouldn't the best Call of Duty players just go play Warzone, have a less stressful life, and make more money than playing in the CDL? They wouldn't. They would go play Warzone. So if my hypothesis is true, then I think that would be another piece of evidence that the best Call of Duty players are in fact Warzone players. Obviously, some people would just prefer to play CDL anyway, even if they could do both and they know they'd make more money in Warzone. Some of those people would exist, but not the majority of them. The majority of them would tend to go to Warzone if that was where the money was. So I'm curious on that. What were you going to say?
I don't really agree with you on that point necessarily, because it also isn't just all about money. Because a lot of these kids that probably went up through challengers that are now in the CDL, they've probably been grinding competitive multiplayer Call of Duty for years and years. They're not just immediately going to switch to Warzone because they could make more money. Because there are, like, people on Twitter were pointing out, and it's a good point, that's saying, like, a lot of these CDL players, they're not like entertaining and people pleasers. They just want to play the game competitively. They would do very poorly streaming. No one would find them interesting, probably. There are very, very, very good players out there that do not have a following whatsoever because they're not entertaining. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's different, like grinding for saying, like, I'm grinding. I'm in the Challengers League this year. I want to be on Optic next year. That's my goal. Then saying I want to be the best Warzone player in the world. They're just different. Being on a organization or being signed to an org, being on a team, and yes, of course, a lot of them just don't. They've been grinding multiplayer for so long. They have no interest in Warzone as it is. And then also at the CDL, I mean, they do get, even if it's the league minimum, they're getting a guaranteed salary. You don't have any guarantee if you go try to play competitive Warzone at all. If you're a bad streamer, you get no earnings. If you're winning matches, like it also, so much of it comes down to what teammates you end up with. So I don't necessarily think any of
that's
that.
True
has
in the CDL too, though, isn't it? What teammates you get?
Yeah, I think so. But if you're like, yeah, that is true. But I don't think that's a very good like argument for the whole thing in general. I don't think that's really fair. Matters.
I mean,
because I think like younger kids that's 18 and he's really, really good at Call of Duty, would that guy rather like be signed and say he's on Optic, or would he just rather say like I'm playing in the World Series of Warzone? You know, like being on an org like that means a lot to those people. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said.
Yeah, I don't think it comes down to the money for a lot of them, honestly.
I think that is where we disagree. I think I don't disagree with any of the points you made. My only contention is that there will be some people who could do both, who are just going to choose the CDL anyway, either because they wouldn't make more money streaming Warzone, even if they would be really good because they have personalities that are not conducive to streaming, or they just want to like play multiplayer or whatever. I think some of those people, of course, exist, but I think the majority have enough personality to be successful streamers. And again, if they would make more money doing that, I think the majority would in fact do that. So I don't think we disagree on if some people would choose CDL regardless. I agree with you. I think we might just disagree on what proportion of CDL players that would be. Because I think a lot of them would be successful enough to where they would make more money just streaming and being competitive Warzone players.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a good question.
I think Pulls Check, I think somebody in Discord, or did you say that? They kind of said something similar last night in the regard of like all the up and coming good Call of Duty players, they try to get into Warzone now, not competitive multiplayer. I think Pulls Check said something about that too, which I would definitely agree with. I think Warzone, as uncompetitive and RNG as you may think it is, and I would have to agree with you, I think that's the future of competitive Call of Duty. I do. It's way more entertaining from a viewer perspective. For me, I think that's way, way more entertaining. And it's because I mean, kids like that, are they going to try to just grind multiplayer rank, try to get on a challengers team, or are they just going to simply start playing wagers in Warzone and try to make a name for themselves? Getting into it also, Warzone is a lot easier to do. You just start streaming the game and winning tournaments, and you can get into the scene, and then people start hearing you. Start cheating, of course, like most of them do. Yeah. They all cheat.
Yeah, streamers are cheaters.
All streamers are cheaters, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the other thing is I think regardless, I'm sure CDL players will also hate hearing this, but I think Warzone is the future of competitive COD. And no, I don't think Warzone is a competitive. BRs are not competitive by nature. They never will be, but it doesn't matter. Video games in 2024, we try to make everything competitive, and that's how it's going to be going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah. Quick little side note before we move to this last one. when I did make this when I stated this hypothesis on Twitter in response to Nade Shot, a lot of people were like, dude, this CDL guy has 600,000 career earnings. How do you think they make less money than Warzone players? Or this guy has 700,000 in career earnings or whatever. Hey man, yeah, if you're a top CDL player and you've been competing for the last 8 years, yeah, you're going to have a lot of career earnings, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they're making more money per year than Warzone competitors. They're throwing out 600K as if they made that all in one tournament or something, or 1 year. It's like, bro, don't link me career earnings over an 8-year career. Or if you want to do that, sure, but let's divide it by 8 then. And then that's a more appropriate comparison. Because again, competitive multiplayer Call of Duty has been around a lot longer than competitive Warzone has been around. So comparing career earnings of Warzone players to career earnings of multiplayer players makes no sense, because there's been years of competitive earnings potential in multiplayer before Warzone even existed. You'd have to compare it year by year. And that would just be for earnings alone. Again, not the externalities, which is if you play in the CDL, you have way less time to stream. So, yeah, you guys telling me about people's career earnings like that's an argument. Maybe the top CDL players do make more money than the top Warzone players. Again, it's a hypothesis. I don't know. That's possible. But telling me about career earnings does not end the argument. It's almost a non sequitur. But anyways, again, for any big names, if you happen to be listening or hear this, or if you actually know, I would love to be educated on this topic, because I could be wrong. And then I would walk this particular hypothesis back. I just need to hear the argument or see the data, better yet. But I still don't necessarily think, if this hypothesis were wrong, that I would then say the most talented players are in fact CDL players. Although I might, actually. I would be curious to see. So, anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
According to somebody in chat, since Warzone started, Simp, Abizi, and Celium have earned 1.2 million each in earnings.
And those are CDL players?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's just earnings, no salary.
So, again, when Warzone started, that wasn't like competitive Warzone. And Warzone potential earnings has been going up year after year. So like the total number of tournament payouts for Warzone in 2020 were less than 2021, less than 2022, will be less than 2023. So to be clear, and this harkens back to what I said earlier, Warzone, and especially competitive Warzone, is still very new. So, yeah. But that's a lot of money. I mean, I'm not disputing that. And I'm not saying CDL players are poor or anything, by the way, to be clear. But what is this last little tweet you wanted to talk about, Tanner?
Oh, yeah, another thing I wanted to clear up. I had another retweet from Strafe on the talk. He said, Warzone players are smoking least competitive BR of all time. Thanks. Yeah, so I think a lot of people seem to assume we think Warzone is competitive. I don't know how many times on this podcast I have said Warzone is the least competitive BR in the world right now. I 100% agree with you. But as uncompetitive Warzone is as a battle royale and Call of Duty as a video game in general, that does not mean Biffle is any less skilled. He's still winning all of the RNG tournaments, but that doesn't mean he's not an insanely talented player and could compete in the CDL. I mean, come on. I mean, if you really want to talk about that, COD in general, competitive COD is the least skillful. The least skillful, the lowest skill gap of like any FPS competitive game in the world right now. Fortnite doesn't even come close. Such an insane skill gap in Fortnite. Yeah. Apex, a much harder game. I mean, CSGO, Valorant, that's different. They're kind of hard to compare even, because that's just KBAM League versus CDL is obviously just Control. They're different games, but I would
still more competitive though.
They consider CDL to be probably the biggest joke of a competitive league in general, but that's because they're very toxic KBAM players and they're talking about a controller league, things like that. But I mean, yeah, think of all the popular games. Yeah, I would agree with you. Warzone is definitely uncompetitive and doesn't require that much skill, and neither does Call of Duty multiplayer, and it never has. It's the most casual, easy to play first-person shooter title like ever released, pretty much. It's not a hard game. You're right. There's not much of a skill gap in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not compared to a lot of other games.
Like Warzone is the least competitive BR of all time. True. And also Call of Duty multiplayer is the least competitive esport of all time.
Pretty much anyone outside of COD thinks of COD competitive as a joke. In case you don't know,
is just
they literally make
true.
fun of it. They're like, "Oh my god, it's an aim assist like league. This is a complete joke." That's just the way it is.
The skill gap in exactly. The skill gap in CS:GO is higher, in Valorant is higher, in League of Legends is higher, in Dota is higher, in Fortnite is astronomically higher.
So I stopped playing Fortnite. It's too hard, man. I can't compete.
Even though it does have controller, the building aspect alone just like blows open that skill gap. So like Apex, I mean, yeah. So like we in this case, we are actually comparing apples to apples. An uncompetitive game mode Warzone to another like fairly not to say there's no competition and just any Tom, Dick, or Harry could compete in the CDL. Let me reiterate that for the 1000th time in case this becomes a TikTok. I'm not saying anyone could do it, but in terms of comparing it to other esports, it's arguably the least competitive one. Maybe not the least competitive. I don't know every esport out there.
I'm just thinking the popular
Halo
ones.
might be, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, what are the other big like esports that are shooters right now? PUBG.
I don't know.
I don't know how PUBG is doing now, but yeah, and of course there's a skill gap in every video game. Duh, of course, but I'm saying the level of skill gap that COD has compared to other games, it's entirely different. And then a lot of people argue, well, you have to have like really good game sense in COD, like just because they have aim assist doesn't mean they don't have game sense. Like they have to have insane game sense. Hey man, so does every other competitive player in any other competitive game on earth. Everyone has game sense. Players in Fortnite have to have insane game sense. Players in PUBG, Valorant, Counter-Strike, all of them have to have really good game sense. I agree. But just that can't just be the argument for CDL just because they have CDL or just because they have aim assist, because I see people talking about that.
Yeah.
Halo, I would probably agree with. Halo might
be the least competitive, actually. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. But anyways.
Halo is the easiest. Yeah, actually Halo is the easiest FPS game ever made, not COD, now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's possible. The current Halo, yeah. I don't know enough to say that for certain, but that's what I've heard. So anyways, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, we're going to cover Season 1 Reloaded, the patch notes and all that stuff, and the disaster that it was, as well as our first impressions. We're going to roll those all into one episode for Saturday. To put a cap on this segment here, a couple of things. Number one, let's all remember, this is an opinion from some guys about a video game. So
it ain't that serious, little bro. Trust me.
Don't send me pipe bombs in my mailbox, please. I'm not advocating for genocide or anything. I'm just saying it seems to me, and I've given a thorough, nuanced argument for the gentleman on the flank that was asking for one. Here you go. This was my fleshed out, nuanced, no hyperbole argument for why I do believe and stand by, and I'm not walking back, the best Warzone players are better by a small margin, but a notable one, than the best CDL players. If you disagree, great, that's fine. Let's not engage in domestic terrorism over it. Not that I'm afraid of that or anything, but I'm just saying. And if you disagree, that's okay. We're all talking about video games. We can have disagreements and still be friends. We don't have to be friends. You can still hate us. You probably will. It's fine. I'll live. So anyway, we hope we cleared some things up here. And if we missed any of the common counter arguments, sorry. These were the ones that I could find that stuck in my mind because we were seeing them often. But if you think we purposefully are not responding to one of them, that's not true. If you think there is one that was worth a response, let us know in Discord or on Twitter, and we will respond to it. I'm not afraid to respond to anything. And I am open to having my mind changed on this. Again, my cash earnings per year hypothesis, if you want to rewind a little bit, I'd be very curious to be educated on that and see what the actual truth is. Who does make more money? The best CDL players, the best Warzone players? That might change my mind alone. Because I believe very strongly that people respond to incentives. And money is the biggest incentive of all. So that's another thing that I would say. And then lastly, I don't know if we're going to retain all the attention this clip has gotten. I suspect we won't. But if we did, and any of these big talking heads, pundits in the Call of Duty world want to talk about this, I'm open to it. I don't know about Tanner. It's going to depend on what the particular offer or invitation is. But, if you wanted to have a dialogue, anyone out there, and you actually want us there, I myself, speaking for only myself, would be happy to join you. I would ask that you have listened to this. That's kind of a big ask. This was a long podcast. I don't know. Whatever. Have me on if you want, or invite me. Let me know. DM us on Twitter. But hopefully we cleared
Hit
things
our business
up.
line. We'll have the secretary check the email. That's me.
Yeah,
I'll have
our team. Yeah, we'll have our team look into it. Yeah. Anything else we need to say to conclude on this?
I love Call of Duty. I stand with the CDL. I stand with Warzone. We're all one big family. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Stay humble though, for sure.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys on Saturday for season 1 Reloaded podcast. And indeed, stay humble.